Welcome to Game Changers live from Miami, Florida. My name is Sergio Tigera. I'm your host. And each and every week we bring you someone who has been a game changer in their field and who's touched the lives of thousands to get their perspective on their journey, their mindset, their struggles and successes so that we can inspire you on your journey. So let's get started right now. And welcome to Game Changers Live. My name is Sergio. You can catch us each and every week here on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any of your favorite platforms. And like we said, we bring on game changers who have been leaders in their field that have done something truly spectacular. And so my guest today is DraKoln's. He's been an avid music royalty investor for decades, and he's also CEO of Where Play Games, Inc., a mobile AR, XR game design and development studio. Having started out as a futures and commodities broker at the age of 19, trading the E-mini S&P, gold futures contracts, and treasury bond strips, he went on to author the Wiley & Sons published best-selling books, Winning the Trading Game and Trade Like a Pro. And along with being a tech investor, financial author, and sought-after speaker, Noble has been a contributor writer to Forbes, Futures Magazine, and a radio and TV financial commentator on Bloomberg and Fox Business, and most recently partnered up with Barnaby Anderson to launch the NFT music startup bandroyalty.com. Welcome, my friend.
Hey, thanks for having me, Sergio. I'm happy to be here.
Fantastic, brother. Hey, I can't wait to get into all this talk because, I mean, there's a lot of good content here in terms of trading, in terms of band royalty, NFT world, blockchain, all this good stuff. But let me hear about you first and kind of what's your story, right? Because this whole podcast is all about inspiring other people on their journey. And, you know, success looks like it was overnight, but it was more like a 20, 30-year overnight success, right? In most cases. So tell me a little bit about your background.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have varying degrees of success at different times. And, you know, people kind of see you at the moment, and oftentimes people don't know from your past. So, you know, we have this project Band Royalty that we've started, but, you know, I was a commodities futures broker and hedge fund operator for almost 26 years, 24 years, somewhere in that range. And I started off like 17 and a half. I graduated high school early, and I was basically homeless. I left home and decided to become an entrepreneur and start a business. And me and a couple buddies decided to buy our first business, which was a coffee house. The owner was selling it, and we were trying to do an acquisition. And that's where I learned how to write a business plan, how to pitch investors and the like. And we found the money to get the coffee house. Unfortunately, the deal didn't finalize or go through, but it taught me a lot, and it led to me really wanting to be to kind of figure out where I wanted to be in finance, because I didn't know what my career path was going to be, but I knew that I wanted to do something in finance, and I knew I liked investing and trading.
So at like 17, 18 years old, you just decided that, okay, we're going to start off and buy a coffee shop?
Yeah, absolutely. It was me and two other buddies.
How was that thinking possible? I mean, were you guys just, you know, business savvy friends, and you guys wanted to do something incredible right off the bat, or what?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. At that time, it was coffee houses were everywhere, and I lived in Long Beach, so coffee houses were everywhere, and it just seemed logical, to be honest. We thought we could do something different and do it in a different way, and the price was not very. Even then, the price didn't seem expensive. I mean, only $70,000 or $80,000 was the buyout to buy into the coffee house and run it. We'd still lease it, but we were going to take over operations. And we found an investor to do it. I don't know. You know, maybe because I've always been an entrepreneur. I mean, when I was a kid in fourth grade, I used to sell comic books to my friends. I'd buy them for $3 for $1, and then we lived on one side of the town, and then we went to the good side of the town, and we'd sell them for $1 a piece, right? So nice. For every dollar I spent, I made an extra $2. I sold candy. So for me, being an entrepreneur,
just natural.
It was natural. I mean, ever since I was a kid, I used to mow lawns. I used to work at the library. When I was 12, I started working as a library page, making like $11-12 an hour. Because it was a city job, right? Yes. So you're putting books on the shelf, and you're making 11 or 12 bucks an hour, and
Yeah.
then 89, 90, right? And people are fighting for minimum wage now for 15 bucks. So
Yeah.
it's always been, I guess, in my blood to kind of find how to just make extra money, because I grew up poor. My mom was a single mom. The cliche single mom. Going to school. Trying to. She graduated eventually from USC, but we were on welfare. It's just one of those things where you're always feeling like you're lacking, and so you always feel like you have to make up the difference.
Wow. So you tried to buy the coffee house, didn't go through, and then at that point, what were you thinking? What was the next step?
For me, I still thought maybe I'll go straight back to college, or I didn't really, I graduated high school early. I wasn't in a rush. I was one of the top people in the class. I'd done really well. I had college courses under my belt, so I felt like I had time to go straight to college. And I ran into, instead of owning a coffee house, I ended up working at one of the local coffee houses, and I ran into a guy who was a gold dealer, and he was doing commodities and physical gold. He claimed his family was from Sudan, and that's kind of how he got into the business. And so I became an assistant to him. And as I started learning about gold and the like, I ended up at 19 getting my commodities license. So at 19, I was a Series 3 commodities broker. And the first 6 months was a huge struggle because I didn't know how to sell, and I didn't know how to close, and I didn't have any techniques or whatever. And but by the second half of the year, I was making 150,000 a year as a commodities broker. Yeah, I mean, because in those days we were charging $100 each side, and the brokers for commissions to trade, and the brokers kept about 30% of that. And so I built a book of clients, and I started. So immediately I'm making probably more than had I gone straight to college.
Oh yeah.
To start off, and that's when I realized the power of sales, the power of the investment industry, the idea of assets under management, and what that meant for people's lifestyles, and that really changed my perspective on why, why wasn't everyone learning this, right? And why wasn't everyone, and so I had to go through that period of really not trying to make everybody be like me, because I realized that not everybody wanted to sell, not everybody wanted to, they didn't see the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Most people were too fixated on, well, what if you can't sell, and working on commission is so hard, and for me, immediately I was sold on commission and commission working, because I realized that whatever energy you put in, you receive back in exponentially.
And you can control the outcome yourself.
Well, you can control yourself and the outcome. I think that if you're just a horrible salesperson, or the industry is not favorable, then no, there's only so much you can do. But it feels good to be able to know for a fact that you aren't left to someone else's whims on whether or not they fire you or cut you or whatever. That you yourself are the driving force behind your success and failure, and for you to realize that sometimes it's time to pivot, that maybe it isn't working, and you change.
And that's the biggest driver, right, behind entrepreneurialism and folks that change, from a career that they want to become an entrepreneur. I think they get to the point where they finally realize that they don't want to succumb to somebody else's whims, and one day get fired just because the boss is having a bad day, and they want to build something for themselves. But you were able to find that out pretty young, which is a great gift.
Yeah, it was good, and I ended up getting my degree in finance, but I got it because the optics, right? Because it's good. Your parents want to still see you in college to get your degree, but it didn't change anything. I still was a commodities broker, and I still was in that particular industry and was starting businesses. And but at the end of the day, I've had more failures than successes. I try to explain that to people. What life has taught me is to kind of nip those failures as fast as possible, and to pivot as quickly as possible to the next thing. Don't get caught up psychologically or emotionally in whatever it is, because the moment you do, then you can't really see a pathway to success. You have to really understand that failure and loss are part of the game. And, the goal is to try and during those periods to maintain integrity, not to try and go down with the ship.
Yeah, yeah. Fail fast and make it part of the process, and just kind of get back. Don't take it personally, because you are going to trip and fall many times, right?
Mm-hmm.
But people don't see that, right? They only see the successful guy. They don't see all the bumps and bruises that you've had along the
Mm-hmm.
way. So then, you started trading, very successful at a young age. Then what
I
happened?
wasn't. Now, mind you, in the beginning, I was not a good trader. We'll start there. But I
Start there.
understood how it worked, and in the commodities firm, you first learn to follow the analyst, right? And the analysts are always giving you the recommendations and the trades, and you pass those on to your clients. And it was only after several years that I started realizing that I couldn't trust the analysts. That the analysts, they had the same tools and information that I had, and I had to kind of step up my game to really understand what it is that they were looking at. And that's when I started writing books, because one of the fastest ways to learn something is to teach somebody else. And so I started writing books and doing more research. And I've had the pleasure and luck to be on stage with the person who brought candlesticks to the U.S., Steve Neeson. I've
Really?
been on stage with
Wow.
John Bollinger, the inventor of Bollinger Bands. Again, for the nerds and the geeks who are trading, these.
Yeah, of course.
Larry Williams, who brought up a lot of really cool indicators that you could see. He actually is the one who introduced me to Wiley and Sons, so I could actually publish my first series of books. And Larry Williams has long been kind of a spiritual mentor from afar over the years with suggestions and etc. So I've had a lot of interesting experiences in the industry. I was editor of Futures Magazine at one point. George Kleinman, who was the former editor, I took over his position and wrote the newsletter article that went out, the newsletter that went out for trading. So it was just very interesting, my career in that space. But one of the things that I'd always do, because again, I'm the same guy who at 17 went to buy a coffee house, is I would work for like 9 months really hard. And then during the summer, I'd always start a new business or try and find an escape hatch, right? Because, I liked trading and I liked the industry, but in the back of my head was always the movie Glengarry Glen Ross. I don't know if you ever remember that movie.
No, which one?
Yeah, Glengarry Glen Ross is about a bunch of old salesmen who are fixated on having the perfect leads. And Jack Lemmon's in it, Alec Baldwin's in it, I think Robert De Niro's in it.
Nice.
So it's a really, if you watch it, it's a really good salesman movie, and it just talks about the sadness of older salesmen, and where they're looking for always the past deal that they used to sell and how great the former deal was. And so for me, because I was so young in the industry, literally everyone was 20 plus years my senior oftentimes. I didn't want to always end up being a broker. And so I really was trying to always find an escape hatch, right? Like, okay, what project can I do next, and what can I invest in, and what kind of project can I participate in? And so one of the projects I got involved with was the music industry, and trying to help my cousin start a music label. And we end up setting up a label and getting a distribution deal, press and distribution deal through a group called Private Eye Mercury. Mercury was bought out by Universal. And that's really where I learned about buying and selling royalties, investing in musicians, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so we ended up starting to do a record label together, and that's what kind of got me into the music space and really understanding what it meant about music royalties and how major corporations made their money. I started learning about performance royalties and there's all these different types of royalties that go out, mechanicals, and really where the money is. It's great to tour, it's great to be quote unquote famous, but on the flip side, the money is at all the royalties. It's really where I started to just really understand more and more about the industry and how royalties are traded like baseball cards amongst all the different major entities and amongst the individuals.
So for those listening, so a royalty is just a fee that's distributed out to a number of people, right? Every time a track, a song is played at a bar and on a station, whatever, right? And there's a lot of people that get a slice of that pie, and everyone from the musician himself to the writer to the label and then you could buy a slice of that pie. Is that correct?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different pies. So what happens is, like anything, one piece of music can live almost in perpetuity. You end up in a commercial. I was listening to uh, some kind of commercial regarding washer and dryers, and I'm hearing "Old Dirty Bastard" song, "Give Me the Money" as the as the sync royalty going on in that music video. Right
Yeah,
now, ODB has passed away,
that's
and the
funny.
music had nothing to do with washer and dryers, and here it is being played on washer and dryer years later. People don't know Merv Griffin did the tune for Jeopardy. He was actually making a song up for his son to help him go to sleep, and then that became do do do.
Oh,
All
no
that
kidding.
became part of the Jeopardy
Oh my
song,
gosh.
and yeah, and he ended up making $4 to $8 million off of that song because it was being paid, it was synced
Yeah.
to Jeopardy, and so wherever Jeopardy was syndicated, he got a check every time it was played. So when I got into the royalty industry, I started learning how all these different pies exist and then how all these slivers exist. It was a real eye opener on how money is made in the music industry. And just like credit card industry, right? It's 2%, 3%. You're thinking it's not a lot of money, but yet MasterCard and Visa are $1 billion industries off of these 2 to 3% transactions, to the point of where people are hoping they can like shave off 0.5% or 1/4%, or stores are passing that 2% or 3% on to the consumer now because it was really eating into their bottom line. And it just generates a lot of income, and there's a lot of it. So the people who are receiving the royalties, who may only rely on a handful of songs, 15 songs, 30 songs, they're the ones who end up getting frustrated because they want to live a certain lifestyle, but their checks are coming in certain amounts every 6 months, or
Right.
every quarter, or once a month. And we all know that our bills are monthly, and you can't wait for 6 months before your biggest check comes to take care of all your
Sure.
bills. Otherwise, they get backed up and come behind you. And so that's when I realized that people are looking constantly for individuals to either invest, lend against, sell, or buy their royalties. And that's when I started understanding or learning about this industry.
So then you applied this knowledge to the NFT space and the blockchain technology that goes with it. And so for those of out there that aren't familiar with what NFTs are, let's talk a little bit about that, and then what you guys have done with this with the band royalty.
Well, you talked about so after I did my hedge fund, I basically retired. I didn't want to be in the commodities industry anymore. I really couldn't figure out what next I wanted to do. But about 5 years ago, I got introduced to the idea of augmented reality, and I filed a patent on combining augmented reality with clothing and merchandise and uh, different items and stuff. And I started a gaming company called Where Play Games. Now, Where Play Games was meant initially to break into the NFT space because we wanted to give NFTs away to people who played our games. And NFTs are just simple. The term means non-fungible token, and it's like Bitcoin or Ethereum. But instead of Ethereum, which can be broken down into fractional little slices down to zero point 0.00 with
Hmm.
8 zeros and a one, right? A non-fungible token is one item and it's tracked on the blockchain. So we figured that if we could give our game players, one item, a special sword in the game or a special character in the game, then they could trade that amongst themselves and be successful at it. And we were really excited about doing it, but it was very difficult in the beginning. No one knew what the protocols were going to be, what the popular ones were going to exist, and finding programmers to do it, all that great stuff. So we ended up kind of postponing it for a while. And in 2020, we released our first series of gaming non-fungible tokens around a unicorn game that's coming out with our gaming company called Carousel World. And that was June of 2020. People, it was still starting off. People were just now starting to kind of get an idea of what it was. And what was exciting was that William Shatner had released the first almost successful NFT at the time. He
Right.
sold out over $100,000 worth of NFTs in 9 minutes. and the
Jeez.
software was easier than ever before. And so I reached out to the developers. We started getting relationships, and we began our NFT. I began my NFT journey there with unicorns, actually, and that was exciting. So it really wasn't anything to do with music or the idea of doing music royalties or
Right,
anything.
right,
It was just how do we make our games enhanced, and how do we give people value to play our games. And the cool part was they could have these unique, distinct unicorns. And we was really
right.
super excited about it. My community, we did over 70,000, almost $80,000 in sales. Our community loved it, and I realized we were on to something. And so when you talk about my collaboration with Barnaby and I for the last 2 years were already working on another game that our company is going to distribute called King of Quotes. So after the success of Carousel World's initial launch of unicorns, we actually did a launch on King of Quotes, which is a quote game of World War II and people understanding history. And we released the game that we originally were giving away for free on the internet. We knew that we were going to turn it into a crypto. We just didn't know what it was. And we released that as our second NFT. And that NFT went out, was King of Quotes, World on Fire. We generated another $50,000 to $60,000 almost within hours of that
Wow.
project. That's continually selling. And so we started really looking at, what the uh, growth or the next phase could be, not only for my gaming company, but for products that we were working on. And NBA Top Shots came out. NBA Top Shots sold over $350
Yeah,
million.
that was incredible. Yeah. Yeah, that's what blows my mind is that so these are, digital assets, right? They're like trading cards, but in digital format that, like you said, you can it's a highlight.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a 6-second highlight that you can watch, but somehow you own that highlight or you own a copy of it, and people are paying fortunes for it. It's it's unbelievable.
Fortunes, hundreds of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, like, can you? I mean, I don't even know if you can like replay it or can you resell. I mean, like, I didn't understand what the position was in owning these highlights, right?
Right.
Because it's great to have it as an NFT, and you're one of 140 people, and that excitement part of it is like, but it's a trading card at that point.
Yeah.
Is one trading card worth 200 grand? I don't know. Maybe it is, and I
I
couldn't
guess
really
it's
put
worth whatever somebody wants to pay for it, is willing to pay for
exactly.
it.
Exactly. And so in my mind, I started changing my perspective, and I said, I've been doing music royalties for years. What if we actually created an NFT that was somehow linked to real world assets that actually function and do something, and
Correct.
how that scenario would work? And so Barbie and I put our heads together, and we knew that we were going to put NFTs. And the NFTs really, just to be clear, the NFTs we created really have nothing to do with the artwork. Have nothing to do with the royalties. They're all artwork based. We created
Yeah.
3,000 music diversity NFTs that exist, and they're part of a limited series. There's only 3,000 of them in this series one. These are the only images of them the way they are, and it's listed 1 to 3,000. The first one, our top one, which we were excited about, sold for $100,000, and our next top two sold for another 100,000, little over 100,000. So we
Wow.
sold 3 NFTs for over $210,000 or whatever the case may be. And so we realized that we were onto the right thing. The beauty of it, though, is we, instead of just taking all the money, I don't know what anybody else does with NFTs. We said, instead of just taking the money and just selling NFTs outright and calling it a day, we would take at least 50% of all the revenue generated and buy music royalties with it, so that all of these NFTs that we're selling that are art based, people can eventually come back and stake. Now, there's no direct correlation that when you buy the NFT, you own any of the copyrights that we own. That's not how we designed it. But how we designed it was we wanted to create a income stream that if anybody wants to just stake their NFTs, it was there for them. There's going to be hoops that people have to jump and different things that they're going to have to do to get access to it. But the reality is the money's coming in from a real world asset
Yeah.
that people can see, and in fact play the songs and the music on their radio or on their Spotify or stream it. And so that was really the novel component of it. That here we are, we're not just taking the money and run. You could buy our NFTs, but we are literally creating a mechanism of a real world asset that could support the project and makes coherent sense that here is an NFT celebrating music, diversity. It's got all this great art, but also there's these royalties that I could eventually access or tap into.
Yeah. So it provides an actual stream of income as a return
Yeah.
on the investment, so to speak.
Yeah, and to be honest, we don't know what the return on investment would be. It's just it creates added value to the NFT. That the only way you can access any of these royalties that we've accumulated and we're sharing is if you own one of our NFTs. You couldn't just own a random NFT and show up. It has to be a banned royalty NFT. And once you have that banned royalty NFT and you jump through the hoops, now you have an access to those 50% stream of revenues we share.
Interesting. Really interesting. I think that's a great point, man, because I think a lot of people struggle with kind of wrapping their heads around what do we do with this once we have it? And okay, is it just its inherent value? And it's digital, you can never touch it, you can never like feel it. It's
Exactly.
all code in your computer, and so it's kind of hard for people to put value on it. But at least if you have some kind of income stream attached to it, with, like you said, tied to a real world asset, that makes it, I think, a lot more valuable in people's mind. They can see where it's coming from.
Yeah, exactly. And that is, like I said, you don't own anything. It's not like you still own
You
this
get access
that
to stream, right?
but you get access. Yeah, and that I think was, for me as a NFT buyer, because I buy NFTs, that's where I thought the opportunity was, and that was lacking. I get appreciation, and I've traded my whole life, but the reality is things don't always go straight up forever.
Right.
And if you want to hold on to it and you kind of want to wait for it to come back in value, or NFTs to become the hot thing again, you would like to be able to stake it or park it or put it somewhere where you know that you can earn some kind of interest or earn some kind of money based on it. And it's not, and we're not, people may only be getting, pennies on the dollar, like 50 cents here, a dollar here, whatever it is that they'll end up, depending on what royalty pool they pick. But the beauty of it is they have some place to put it. They don't have to just let it sit and do nothing. And that's
Right.
always been the complaint about the banks, right? The banks are not paying any interest whatsoever. And so why sit your money in the bank? I almost feel the same way about NFTs. If you buy hot on Monday and it's cold on Friday, well, then you're just as good to put your money in the bank at that point, because now you're locked and there's nothing you can do about it.
That's right. That's right. Well, man, you guys are doing some really interesting things in this space. I feel like this is like the mid '90s with the internet, like where people sort of trying to figure out what's to come in this space. And there's so much that
Yes.
we haven't even figured out yet, but it is coming. And so you want to get on board. You want to dip your toe in the water, try these things so you can start seeing how this functions. Because once you pull the curtain back, there's so much. There's a whole nother world back here that people aren't necessarily playing in at this point.
Yeah, we all call it Web 3.0. We knew that the internet isn't. First of all, the internet has been around since the 70s, but then it evolved. This is going to continue to evolve, and that this whole idea of the blockchain is really vital to the internet, because we've been passing back and forth digital assets this whole entire time, but no one's been able to track it. So the idea that you have custody, I love crypto and I love the idea of Bitcoin and Ethereum, but people have to look at what this really is. And it's double booking accounting. It's a ledger. And that's why it's called the distributed ledger technology. That finally, for the first time, we can make a video like this, Sergio, and we can put it somewhere that'll be immutable. It won't be deleted. It won't go away. We can put this on IPFS and forever, without anybody stopping it or whatever. This is recorded and locked in history, and then you can put that out anywhere. That's a real big move, and we can then trade it because it shows custody. You can then take this on IPFS, create an NFT, and this show for Gamechangers could be an NFT that we distribute, and only the people who could watch it are the people who bought it or who we've allowed to share in that NFT. That's a huge game changer in having control and access in a digital world. Up until now, that hasn't really existed.
That is powerful stuff, man. Hey, brother, congratulations on all your success, on all the books and the trading and the games, and now band royalty. I need to get in there and become an owner of an NFT in that space. I was just looking at it. So is it 1 Ethereum? Is that the price for it?
So yeah, so for the base level, one Ethereum gets you one vinyl NFT. Now, we've broken it down to gold and platinum and double diamond, just like the music industry and when it talks about the number of records sold. And one vinyl will get you access to one royalty pool. If you bought 3 vinyls, you could actually, for 1 ETH each, you could get access to all 3 royalty pools. Or you could also buy one of the more rare NFTs that have a higher number and different artwork and the like. And someone will give you access to 2 royalty pools. Some will give you access to 3 royalty pools. But if you just want to get started and you want to test it out, absolutely. One Ethereum gets you one vinyl NFT that you can then eventually stake in any one of our pools and participate in some of the music royalties we collect.
Fantastic. There you go, man. You can be part of the industry in one shot.
That was a goal. That was a goal, man. Make you a music mogul. And
that's right.
The funny thing is, and I'll leave you with this: the catalog that we bought for performance royalties, we have people like Justin Timberlake singing songs. We got a bunch of his stuff off of his 2020 album. So we've got Mirrors on it. We went and got some songs from Rihanna. We've got songs on there from Cher. We got a song on there from Beyonce. We've got so these are name performers, platinum performers that are singing in here, and we have part of the performance royalties that we got from one of the writers who just didn't want to continue to only receive his royalties over time, but wanted to get a chance to tap into it. And that's what's happening in the industry, and we're happy to be able to help a writer out. We get 8 years of the royalties now, and we get a chance to share that income with whomever decides to stake. That's amazing. It's not a lot of income, but it's income that people can tap into if they want to pause their NFTs.
Fantastic. No, well, thank you so much for being on, Brody. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Hey, I appreciate it, Sergio.
If you loved what you heard in today's episode of Game Changers, please subscribe and rate us. The lessons and the stories in these podcasts are immensely valuable, so I invite you to share them with a friend who needs to hear it. You may end up being the game changer in their lives. If you loved what you heard in today's episode of Game Changers, please subscribe and rate us. The lessons and the stories in these podcasts are immensely valuable, so I invite you to share them with a friend who needs to hear it. You may end up being the game changer in their lives.